On this episode of the Layover Live, Amber Gallegos stops by to talk Evergreen content. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 153 of the Layover Live, where we bring you the top article from the Layover each week. I'm Jason Swick, VP of Strategy and Insights at SimpleView, and welcome to this week's show. We're happy to have you here. Now, I think we're at the point where destination marketers are just so sick of probably talking about the pandemic. It's driving them crazy, I'm sure. But the COVID-19 pandemic hopefully didn't bring every marketing effort you were conducting to a screeching halt. Surely, many core essentials along the way have carried on, things like SEO and email marketing and social media. And fueling all of those channels, of course, is content. Now, creating content is one of the key essentials that should just keeping on. In most any situation, staying silent with your content creation is typically the wrong choice, especially in times like these. Why? Well, for one, people are on their digital devices all the time. I mean, a lot. And quarantine travelers are looking for distractions to help them get through their days. While held up in quarantine and working from home, millions and millions of people have relied on those digital devices for everything from entertainment to planning their next vacation. Even as many consumers out there are clutching those travel dollars right now, maybe more tightly than ever, just waiting for that vaccine to take effect, there's still a huge opportunity to reach and influence them with your content marketing efforts. In fact, according to a stat I just saw this week from Destination Analyst, nearly 56% report being highly open to travel inspiration right now. Content helps to improve brand awareness, it helps to build trust, inform our audience, and it even helps boost leads that we can use for future marketing efforts. So, publish that new post, write that new blog, create that new video, and refresh that evergreen content. Wait, isn't evergreen content meant to be just that? Evergreen though? I mean, set it and forget it? Well, not quite. And here today to talk about evergreen content and some of the myths that surround it is Amber Gallegos, digital content editor here at SimpleView. So Amber, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me, Jason.
You bet. Super happy to have you here. I haven't seen you that much, so it's been good as we talked about before the show to kind of catch up. So again, hope you're doing well. But I want to kind of jump right into it because there's a lot to cover here, and I think it's a really important topic. So our article of the week this week comes from Search Engine Journal and is titled Evergreen Content, Myths and How to Keep It Alive Longer. And it does a great job of getting into the fact that evergreen content isn't really immortal. It's meant to be refreshed, and we have to think about that. It's kind of a myth that surrounds that. So Amber, let's just jump right in. First and foremost, I think for those out there, just to make sure everyone's on the same page before we get going, what exactly is evergreen content? And then maybe, parallel to that, why it's not kind of a set it and forget it like maybe some of us originally thought.
Yeah, for sure. So evergreen content you can essentially think of as content that isn't event-based. It's going to be your static pages on the website, your things to do, your restaurants, your lodging pages. And really the difference is that it doesn't speak to a precise moment. It just speaks more generally. But the reason why it's not set it and forget it is because things are always changing, right? In any destination, hopefully it's growing, businesses are opening and closing, even not in times of COVID. So definitely when we talk about evergreen content, we want it to speak generally about the destination without being event-based. But that doesn't mean that you should never go back to it and refresh it and say, this entertainment district now has these businesses open and going back and looking at it for little tweaks like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good overview of evergreen content. Again, I think if we think about that, we kind of think like, hey, this is something I got to create one time, never have to create it again, or wait many years to have to refresh that. And the day and age we work in nowadays, the space moves just too quickly. So that is definitely a myth that we need to smash and start to prepare for keeping that content fresh moving forward. So let's talk about that a little bit. How can destination marketers out there plan to adapt then their evergreen content or keep that content fresh? The article talked about a little bit about tending, your content garden. So maybe let's get into that a little bit. How can they keep that content fresh?
Yeah, well, at Simple View, we definitely recommend you do a content audit where
Okay.
you're looking at your content periodically to see overall what's performing well on the website, what's not, based on your destination's particular KPIs and goals. Looking back at that content at least once a year, if not quarterly, and it's not completely overhauling it, but seeing what's going on with your content to make sure that you can make tweaks as you go so that it doesn't get so untended that then you do have to completely overhaul it at some point because it's fallen into such disarray and become so outdated. The goal is to
Hmm.
really have content that can live on your website, but is still out of the moment, no matter if it's spring or fall. They're different seasons, but the visitor is going to find the information they need just because you're making these little tweaks here and there. And using data to do that is a really good approach to see what needs to be tweaked. And then your destination too of what's going on there and what has changed or what has been updated, and just kind of
Hmm.
we find the folks at the DMOs know best. They kind of have a running list of things that are changing and going on and know where their content needs to be updated. But data can really help you set priorities and make a plan to do that.
Yeah, I think it's really good stuff. I love the idea of thinking about it from an audit standpoint. That's always a good place to start, right? And it's amazing. I know when you and the team are working on that stuff, there's some of the things that turn up, areas maybe that we thought were okay aren't okay, and vice versa. So I think it's something really important, especially as we're kind of getting ready to move into like a new phase of this pandemic, right? If we think about the pandemic in these four phases, right? We're kind of in this kind of like phase two is what we call it, which is kind of like this rebound phase. We're kind of marketing right now, but we're living with COVID. Come the summertime, as we look at this year as this tale of two halves, and we start to see pent up demand, or people are starting to exercise that and they're wanting to get back out because the vaccine's more in place and they're ready to travel again. Preparing for that rebound right now is really important, and planning for that rebound right now is really important. And some of the ways you can do that is really start to assess where you're at with your situation. Assessing that can be looking at KPIs, it could be looking at your paid media, but definitely looking at your content, because your content fuels all those things. So now may be a good time as you're assessing that content to start to do a content audit to make sure that you're ready for that road ahead and ready for that marketing once we turn things back on, which is looking more and more like it's going to be beginning of summer to late summer, depending on what's happening in your destination. So really, then I think as we're talking about that audit, now may be a good time. What can marketers out there do once they have conducted an audit, right? So maybe right now they're planning on doing an audit or an assessment of their content. Um, you know, what what can they do once they've got that put in place, and they've got that plan rolling along? Maybe give some advice there.
Yeah, I mean, really make it realistic for your team and your destination. I know a lot of teams are kind of strapped for resources right now. So make out a plan of, we have 20 pages we want to update. Are we going to do one a week or two a week
Mm-hmm.
or something like that that's realistic for your team? And then think about the resources you have. Is there content that we can um, repurpose and make it new again? A blog that's performing really well, we update that publication date, sprinkle in some information on safety protocols that are in place now. Nothing major, but just using the resources you already have to get the most out of your content, and definitely being realistic, and then also seeing what community resources you have. Do you have a local rental company, if you're a beach destination or something like that, that you can have talk about water sports and maybe have them featured on a blog, and they write it themselves, and then you're bringing in a different voice, and you're both getting something out of that content. It's promoting them, they're promoting the destination, things like that, of being really mindful of what you have already and the small adjustments you can make, making a plan that's approachable, and then what community resources can you bring in to get the most out of your content.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, right? If you could leverage what's already out there in your community, I think for the most part, DMOs have done a really good job with this during the pandemic, right? If you look at some of the things that a lot of destinations have done, where they focused and even featured a lot of their locals, and they've had them come in and write guest blogs, or if they're doing podcasts, had them on as podcast guest. Even had them, help with some of the writing on social media and things of that nature. It's a great way, especially as DMOs unfortunately had to furlough staff or let staff go, and they're looking for help with a lot of these things to keep that content velocity up. Leveraging that local community, I think is really, really good advice. And then you mentioned the repurposing of content. I love that too. These pieces sometimes take time to put together. And for those pieces that have done a really good job and resonated with your audience really well, even if they were from a few years ago, resurface those pieces again, make some adjustments and some tweaks to that content, and repost it. It is something, if it performed in the past really well, it's probably going to do a pretty good job today. So we see that a lot with a lot of the people that we follow, where they repurpose a lot of content. So I also think that's a really, really good advice as well, especially now as maybe serving different audiences with different needs. So looking back and repurposing that rather than starting something new is also, I think, a good advice coming out of that plan. So, one thing I want to ask you too, and kind of wrapping things up, as we talked about what evergreen content is, thinking about refreshing that content and maybe starting off with an audit and kind of getting an idea of the landscape and where you're at. Okay, now you've come out of the audit and you found some ways to be resourceful. What other advice maybe do you have for DMOs out there, Amber? I know you guys work with a lot of destinations on their content. So maybe talk about some advice as it relates to content for some other destination marketers out there.
Yeah, I think just being really realistic about your destination. We do quarterly reporting for our content clients, and we consistently see in the top 10 pages, events pages or top pages. So even though you might not be having events on the scale that you had 2 years ago, let your visitors know what is going on for your events. Are they modified? Are they online? Virtual events? Are they lower capacity? Just those little things. If they want to see the events, and maybe they want the reassurance that events are socially distant or whatever it is. But I would say don't dismiss content because you think it's not a subject you want to talk about right now, because the visitors still want that information, and it's a bit of reassurance for them when they're in that dreaming phase and they're thinking about, oh gosh, when this is over, I'm going to go here and there. They want to go to your website and get that reassurance that your destination is safe. So don't be afraid to touch on topics that you think you shouldn't right now. You have to address it and be realistic about what your destination is doing. And most destinations are doing a lot to keep visitors safe. So really promote that and put a spotlight on that. And then also, just like you said, refreshing content. The search engines want to see your content refreshed. That's going to bump you up in the results. So just, little tweaks, you think maybe it doesn't matter. It makes a difference. So those little things, putting yourself in the place of the visitor and their mindset and capturing them in that dreaming phase and giving them the reassurance and the content that they want is really going to go a long way.
Yeah, great insights there. You make that point of it being good for SEO, which is also an ever-changing landscape as well. But being that, again, it's organic traffic is still that number one source of traffic for all DMOs, even during the pandemic. And so, and that space is getting very competitive. So refreshing that content regularly is a good strategy to have. So Amber, thanks for coming on and sharing this advice. I really appreciate it again, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. Great chatting with you, Jason.
Yeah, likewise. And thanks for tuning in each and every week. If you're not subscribed, please do so now. We're also available on Spotify and iTunes if you want to consume us through audio podcast. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.